Hello, I'm Father Louis Skirty with another interview with His Excellency Bernardito Auza, Permanent Observer of the Vatican to the United Nations. And this interview will be focused on what the Archbishop does at the UN and how he carries out the intentions of Pope Francis. Is that all right?
Sure.
Thank you very much for having us back.
Thank you, Father.
First of all, what was your reaction when His Holiness asked you to be the permanent observer?
I was shocked.
Did you get it in a letter or a phone call?
This is really true. I mean, I because this was my own thinking, and I was here before that. I was here before. This is actually the second time I'm here, and while I was in the Secretariat of State in the Vatican, I also had some experience with multilateral diplomacy.
Right.
And so, but after 6 years, you usually have after 5 years, and then you could expect a change, a transfer. And this is really true. People do not believe me. But I was just thinking in these months, I said, Lord, send me wherever you want. But they said, but preferably I would like to go back to Madagascar.
Oh, wow.
And then I said, but never to the UN. But not that I hate the UN, but I was.
And the Lord has a sense of humor.
Yeah, and the Lord certainly had a great sense of humor. Yeah, I mean, I think all works are equally important.
Sure.
But I just had a certain predilection to to the bilateral, to being in a capital. And so, I mean, I'm equally happy to be here, certainly, but I was not expecting it, certainly. I never expected it, because also, usually the permanent observers stay longer. But my successor was here for 5 years. But that was, I guess.
Was it a letter, a phone call? How did?
It was. It's always a coded message. That it's always only to you, and nobody. It said that nobody could read this message other than you.
Fascinating.
Yeah, we always appointments are always communicated by coded message. We have our special ciphering and deciphering machines.
It's fascinating. It's a whole nother world for us.
Anyway, yes, I was so I think in a sense he sent me here because I already had some experience of working here, and of course, every time you come, there are always, there are what you call the perennial priorities, and then there are also those priorities which come and go. And with Pope Francis, I think his priorities really are very clear. So he also mentioned all those priorities in his huge speech addressed to the United Nations General Assembly on September 25, 2015. And so that's one of our guidelines of our work. What are the things that we emphasize? What are the things that we want to have conferences on? So really, also in my private meetings with the Pope, so we also talk about
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. That must be thrilling. I know you have a meeting.
It's always a pleasure. I mean, my advantage in a sense, of course, when he came here, I had to host him, and but I really was not nervous at all, because I really felt very relaxed with him, because when I was in Haiti, I had already met him twice. A few months after he was elected, all the nuncios were going to Rome. And then 6 months after that, I had a very long conversation with him on Haiti. And he was fascinated about Haiti. And he knew some people in Haiti, some bishops. It was very lovely. And then after that, the third time I saw him, that's when I was sent here.
Yes, so I really appreciated you.
No, I don't know. But in a sense, but I think, after 6 years in Haiti, and in a sense, I was ready for a change. I was ready for a transfer. Right. So it just came probably at the right time. But
his personality, of course, his teachings focus on poverty, elimination of poverty, the ecology, the world, not green necessarily, but everything that has to do with preserving, respecting our environment. How does all that come into your ministry at the UN?
And there are very specific themes. There are specific themes that we are really kind of pursuing as our priorities. As of now, at least in 2017, given there's so many conflicts in the world today, and as the Pope said, these are kind of third world thought in Kismi. Those are his words. But of course, the nature of conflict has changed in time. We are not anymore engaged in world wars. There's just as well so much violence, so much war, so many. There has never been this many forced migrants and refugees. There has never been this many people crossing borders. 255 million of them, 65 million refugees. So these are really huge questions. So one of our, I would say, our first priority is really to every occasion that there is for us to speak against war and to the promotion of peace. For instance, twice a month at the Security Council, we participate in the open debate of the Security Council. So that's one of our avenues. And also at the General Assembly level. Yes, I go and speak. Yeah, I go and speak and deliver what they call a statement. And then we have to keep on repeating the Pope's message to the General Assembly that war is the negation of all rights, and at the same time it's a disaster to our environment. So these are things that we keep on repeating. And then of course the question of controlling arms, trading arms, arms production, etc. Nuclear disarmament is going to be a big conference at the end of March.
Right.
On nuclear disarmament. And then, of course, related with that is, the question of the refugees and migrants and internally displaced persons. This is huge. I mean, considering just the people who have been displaced, the people who have been displaced by violence, by conflicts and wars, and by persecutions. Whether they are persecutions because of religion, persecutions because of other, race, etc. So persecutions because there are dictatorial regimes that don't accept religion, that don't respect human rights, etc. So all these reasons are there, which are huge driving factors why people move. People are forced to move. Of course, there are economic migrants.
Sure.
There are those migrants because simply, voluntarily they want to move.
Exactly.
They want to have better opportunities, etc. These are free migrants, you might say. But the tragedy are those really migrants who have not only deprived of everything they had, that they had to flee as fast as they could, leaving everything behind.
With nothing, right?
And then they have nothing. And then what is even more tragic is that they are not welcome anywhere. So that's what the Holy Father has always emphasized. And then related to that, we are also very interested in the question of human trafficking,
Right. Yes.
or officially, as the UN would say, trafficking in persons. There has never been also slavery has never been so rampant as it is now than even the time of slavery.
Exactly.
An estimated probably as high as 45 million people are victims of human trafficking. Officially, the ILO in 2012, said that there are 21 to 25 million people being victimized, mostly women. And most of the women who are trafficked for prostitution as other forms of sexual exploitation. And now there are more and more men are being trafficked for forced labor. So it is such, in a sense, becoming more urgent for raising awareness, having initiatives on how to take care of the victims, which is really a primary concern of the Church, because it's the pastoral side.
And there are so many ways our public could get involved with this, and through the UN and the UN website and Catholic Relief Services, Catholic Charities.
Yeah, there's also that group which was inspired by the Pope, which actually takes the name of the residence where he lives. That's the Santa Marta group. Its president is the Cardinal of Westminster, England, and it is a very specific group of people of really mostly civic institutions like the church and law enforcement officers. So law enforcement officers, you might say, should take care of catching the trafficker and
right,
and then make sure that he's penalized, etc., that he's judged by the court, etc. On the other hand, the Catholic Church and other institutions would take care of the victim, because it is all studies indicate that victims will never open up to the law enforcement authority.
Right.
They don't feel. They don't feel at ease. They don't feel safe. They are always afraid that immediately they will be sent back home.
Deported, right?
And then not only that, that they are, somewhere along the line they kind of collaborated with our own traffickers. Of course, there's a huge difference between human smuggling and human trafficking. The problem is many human smuggling ends up in human trafficking. That is when the person who was voluntarily smuggled, along the way, he or she didn't want anymore, and yet he's forced to be trafficked. So it's a whole process. So what the church and other civic institutions will do is not only is to take care, of course, the victim, make them feel at ease, and then also to build their confidence so that they could collaborate. They would be willing to collaborate with the law enforcement authorities to catch the traffickers.
You've written on the rule of law. Could you just talk about that a little bit, because it's fascinating.
The rule of law is one of the, we might say, big agenda items of the General Assembly. It's called the Sixth Committee. It's called the Legal Committee. The rule of law is it's really, we might say, you could describe it in the way that you oppose it to the law of force, as we would say. So the rule of law is the observance of all, who are subject to those laws, to behave, to conduct one's affairs according to the norms, according to the laws. So the more complications there are when this rule of law becomes, a subject of international treaties, international relations. How much the rule of law in international relations, in international treaties and conventions would affect, let's say, sovereignty. So there is always that debate on how much this. In fact, in many decisions of the United Nations, for instance, concerning the rule of law, this is the law that is applied universally. And this rule of law, the question there is a number of countries would take an exception to that. So what is this rule of law? Is this rule of law universal? Is this rule of law takes the exception of sovereignty? Many countries would say, well, this is a law, but it would not override our sovereignty on making laws in our country. So there is that problem there. But really, the rule of law, as in itself, is universal. Whatever in a country, only that there are different types of consider human rights. There are what we call universal human rights, which are enshrined at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Right. And at the same time, there are certain rights that some countries or a group of countries would impose on other countries that do not recognize them as fundamental human rights. So that becomes, let's say, the question of, abortion. There is a group of countries or certain countries are really pushing, some UN agencies pushing that, that the so-called right to abortions be universally recognized. But there are so many countries who would not accept that. So this is not this is a question also of relates to the question of the rule of law, because if countries who pursue that and even campaign for that, they will think that a country which doesn't have a law allowing abortion it doesn't have a rule of law or something like that. And also, of course, the rule of law is applied to how governments behave. Corruption, for instance. Right. Corruption is a huge problem. It is estimated that the biggest loss of the world economy is really corruption. So where is the rule of law? It's actually a very a very big discussion. It's a huge topic.
And it's constantly
And it's constantly being discussed every year.
Right.
And then, of course, allied to those questions are the tribunals, the international tribunals, the international courts. How much of, let's say, the penal court, the International Penal Court now, is called International Criminal Court. You know, there has been controversies recently because many African countries complained that the International Penal Court is only trying African leaders.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there is a kind of a racist lens in that.
Right.
Of course,
right.
you know, for instance, a few countries already left. I think 2 or 3 countries. One wanted to leave and then it came back. So, you know, this is a universal, you know, a universe of law, where really the concept of the rule of law is supposed to be applied everywhere.
Sure, yeah.
And so the international, you know, practically all the special courts were created or have been created for countries in Africa. The special courts for Rwanda, special court for Liberia. Of course, there were, you know, all these. And then at the International Penal Court, everybody tried, where all of them are African so far. And then, and then there is the special court in Yugoslavia anyway after the Balkan Wars.
I love
So,
the
yeah.
fact that you have this information at your fingertips. I mean, and I don't want to prolong your time. I know it's precious. What is one thing you would want our audience to know about the role of the Vatican in the position of the permanent observer to the UN?
Well, certainly our primary mission and the spirit guides, our mission has always been the same, and that is our presence is meant to bring the leaven of the gospel to the international community, and to bring, we might say, what Paul is called our being expert in humanity. That is our experience of humanity, bi-millennial experience of humanity, and bring these you know, experiences, bring these lessons, bring these ideas into the debates and, you know, the big international questions of the time. So that is our, so in order to do that, we, as avenues of bringing that into the UN, we might say debate, so we use all the channels we have. You know, the permanent observer could participate in all the debates, could, you know, deliver statements, could submit documents to the General Assembly, to the Secretary General, and then, for instance, you know, participate in the Security Council debates. We participate in the General Assembly debates, and these are channels, you know, with which and through which we vehicle our priorities according to the times.
And you're bringing the leaven of the gospel.
Yeah, and bringing there, because our interventions are always inspired by our Catholic social doctrine, by our Catholic social teaching, and of course the pronouncements of the Pope. It's really for us a very good occasion to echo, you know, to echo the speech, you know, the teachings of the Pope, and bring them into the international debate. So I think it's a good,
fascinating.
It's a good way of, you know, it's a good way really of engaging with the whole world.
Absolutely.
And at the same time learning from them and be able to contribute. Because I think, I sincerely believe that there is an appreciation of our contribution, because we see things and we see issues in a different angle. I mean, we have a really specific angle of seeing things, and I think in the end it is not negative.
Archbishop, Your Excellency, this has been wonderful. I mean, I could listen to you all day and go on, but I'm sure you have a schedule. I really appreciate your cutting out time for us today.
Thank you.
And I'm sure our audience will really benefit from this information, knowing that we have our own permanent observer there at the UN representing leaven of the gospel. Beautiful.
Thank you, Father.
God bless you, and I really appreciate it. Stay well. Ad multos
Thank you very much.
This has been Father Louis Scurti with His Excellency Archbishop Bernardito Auza, Permanent Observer of the United Nations here in New York City. God bless you, and let me hear from you, Father Louis Scurti at hotmail.com. God bless you.